The sky was heavy with dark clouds, threatening rain over the vast expanse of the human military training field. On the horizon, the sounds of military commands, shouts, and explosions echoed like a storm of steel and flesh. The humid breeze carried a distinct scent of sweat, mud, and something that Commander Zill, a veteran officer of the Kresh fleet, identified as resistance. Beside him, his assistant, Lieutenant Farron, observed the scene with equal discomfort. The skin of both, a metallic blue characteristic of the Kresh, reflected the pale, intermittent light breaking through the clouds, a stark contrast to the somber and oppressive tone of this place. Farron shifted uneasily, adjusting the collar of his uniform with reluctance. "Commander," Farron began in a reverent whisper, "I don't understand. Is this Earth's most advanced army? These young ones look more broken than prepared." Zill kept his gaze fixed on the field, where young human cadets stumbled through the mud, their faces rigid with determination and pain. This was nothing like the military training the Kresh employed. In the Kresh fleet, advanced simulators ensured combat instruction in a controlled, precise, and calculated environment. But here, chaos seemed to be an integral part of the training. Before Zill could respond to his assistant, a tall human in a dark green uniform approached, a disturbingly enthusiastic smile etched across his scarred face. Major Harlow, the instructor in charge of the training base, greeted them with a firm salute. "Commander Zill, Lieutenant Farron, welcome to the West Point Military Academy. I hope you're ready to see our recruits in action," the Major announced, extending his hand in a confident gesture that Zill hesitated before accepting. Watching the cadets advance under the relentless cold rain, Zill couldn't suppress the burning question in his mind. "Major Harlow, what exactly are you training here?" Harlow's smile widened. "Resilience, Commander. These cadets need to learn to face the worst the world can throw at them before they face the enemy." He pointed toward a group of recruits crawling through an area riddled with mud and barbed wire, their faces covered in dirt and exhaustion. "We call that mud crawl. It's a great way to build character." Zill blinked, trying to determine if the Major was joking. "Build character," he repeated incredulously. "Wallowing in mud? That character must be worth a lot to justify such an ordeal." Zill and Farron were led by the Major through the training field, observing the various training areas with a mixture of fascination and horror. In one corner, cadets practiced climbing a 6-meter wooden wall, many of them falling and getting up repeatedly. In another, a group faced what appeared to be an obstacle course filled with dirty water puddles, barbed wire fences, and deep trenches. "This is what we call the trial," Harlow said proudly. "A final test. They go 3 days without sleep with ration food and constant training. When they complete this stage, they truly understand what overcoming limits means." Zill's mouth opened in shock, but he held back any critical comments, choosing to observe carefully instead. He had never imagined that depriving soldiers of basic resources, like sleep and food, could be considered a valid training strategy. For the Kresh, where efficiency was paramount, this kind of approach would be seen as a waste of strength and focus. Farron, at his side, seemed about to protest, but Zill grabbed his arm, signaling him to remain silent. As the cadets ran, their heavy and uncertain steps echoed through the field. Each of them bore an expression of pain that, somehow, was filled with an unyielding determination. Zill was fascinated, though he would not admit it. These young humans were not like Kresh recruits trained for precision and cold calculation. They were raw, chaotic, but also formidable. Walking among the rows of cadets, the trio stopped to observe a new activity. Ahead of them, several young recruits were assembling small, improvised structures from pieces of wood, leaves, and ropes. The rain had already turned the ground into a sea of mud, but none of the cadets seemed to care. "And this?" Zill asked, narrowing his eyes in an attempt to understand the task. "Survival training," Harlow replied, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. "They need to build shelters and start fires with minimal equipment. It teaches adaptation. You never know when the enemy might leave them in a situation where they'll have to rely solely on themselves. And how can this be effective?" Farron questioned, his tone betraying the discomfort he felt. Surely, in real combat, technological support is key. The Major shrugged. Yes, technology is important. But what if it fails? What if they're alone, without communication or resources? A soldier needs to know how to manage with whatever they have. Zil remained silent, pondering. He had faced battles where Kresh fleet technology had failed at critical moments, but soldiers rarely managed to adapt without the proper equipment. The human approach was pragmatic, even if brutal. Major Harlow led them to an area surrounded by a training field filled with small trenches and complex obstacles. Every few meters, there was a shooting post where cadets practiced live fire under the strict supervision of instructors shouting orders and reprimands at the top of their lungs. "This is the live fire range," Harlow announced proudly. Zil's eyes widened. Live fire? The cadets shoot with real ammunition? Exactly. It teaches them to make quick decisions and handle pressure. If they can't handle it here, they won't handle it out there. As they watched, one of the cadets hesitated, his body tense as he tried to line up a shot. The instructor showed no mercy, approaching the cadet and shouting, "Focus. Hold steady. The enemy won't wait for you to make up your mind." The young soldier swallowed hard, nodded to collect himself, and fired his shot with renewed precision. Farron looked away, clearly unsettled by the intensity of the training. Zil, however, remained focused. He noticed that even under pressure and real challenges, the cadets seemed to absorb the lessons and grow tougher. After the shooting range, Harlow led Zil and Farron to a discreet building with thick doors and dim lighting. Inside, it was filled with large pods connected to monitors and control systems. "Welcome to the combat simulation sector," the Major announced, gesturing to the pods where cadets were settling in. "Each one here will face a virtual scenario that replicates a real battle with maximum fidelity." Farron sighed in relief. Finally, something closer to what we use in the Kresh fleet. But the lieutenant's relief was short-lived. As soon as the simulations began, the cadets' shouts and commands echoed through the room. They reacted as if they were truly on the battlefield, their faces contorted with fear and determination. To Zil, it became clear that humans had taken the concept of simulation to a level bordering on psychological terror. It was almost as if they wanted the cadets to feel every aspect of combat, the imminent danger, the pain, and the despair. "It's important that they feel everything," Harlow explained, closely watching the monitors. "They need to learn how to fight even when their body and mind are on the brink of collapse." After the simulation, Harlow took the visitors to the final stop of the tour, a physical exercise room where cadets were performing grueling tasks in repetition, each pushing their muscles to the limit. An instructor paced among them, encouraging them to keep going, even as some collapsed from exhaustion. Zil couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and horror. These humans seemed not only to endure pain, but to embrace it as part of the process. In the Kresh fleet, physical strain was always avoided to keep soldiers in their most optimized form. However, humans appeared to see value in testing themselves to the edge. "Major Harlow, what is it you're trying to achieve with all of this?" Zil finally asked, his voice tense. Harlow crossed his arms, observing his cadets. "We want them ready for anything. War is unpredictable, and preparation has to go beyond tactical and physical skills. They need mental resilience, an unbreakable spirit. The body will break, that's a given. But if the mind holds, that's what will decide the battle." Zil pondered for a moment, absorbing every word. Perhaps it was this mindset that gave humans their unique advantage. It wasn't just technology or strategy, it was something deeper. A will of iron forged through suffering itself. As they headed toward the ship that would take them back, Zil felt a weight in his chest. He cast furtive glances at the cadets, now dispersed, their expressions of exhaustion mingled with a palpable sense of accomplishment. They had survived yet another day of intense challenges. Upon entering the ship, he exchanged a final look with Harlow, who observed them with a slight nod. "You humans are unlike anything we've ever faced," Zil murmured to Farron as the ship began to ascend. "There's something in your nature, something that makes you formidable beyond any training or technology." Farron nodded, thoughtful. He wasn't sure if the Kresh fleet would ever adopt methods like the humans, but one thing was certain. Both left the experience with a newfound understanding and respect for humanity. Throughout the journey back, Zil reflected on what he had learned. He knew his report would stir controversy among his people's leaders. The humans' training methods were extreme, perhaps irrational in the eyes of the Kresh. Yet the commander could not deny the power of forging strength through adversity. Humans were not just training soldiers, they were forging warriors capable of facing the impossible, not with precision, but through sheer resilience. And so, Zil and Farron returned to the Kresh fleet, carrying with them an unexpected lesson about the true power of human determination. As the ship crossed the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere, Commander Zil remained silent, lost in reflections on what he had witnessed. He and Farron watched through the small portholes as the Academy grew smaller beneath the gray and stormy sky. Yet even as the training field became a mere speck on the horizon, the image of the human cadets in their trials still filled his mind. Lieutenant Farron, seated beside him, broke the silence. "Commander, do you believe that this approach, this way of shaping soldiers, is why humans are respected among other races?" Zil sighed, recalling Major Harlow's eyes illuminated by a strange mix of pride and hardness. "Perhaps, Farron, they do more than train. Humans seem to almost celebrate resistance to suffering." He paused, searching for the right words. "In our culture, we maintain control, plan every detail, and strive for maximum efficiency. For them, from what I've seen, chaos and discomfort are fundamental ingredients. Perhaps that's their secret, this willingness to face any situation, even those beyond their physical or emotional capacity." As the ship switched to autopilot, both were carried back to memories of their experiences in the Kresh fleet, where training followed a well-defined structure. For the Kresh, discipline was synonymous with perfection. Every movement, every decision was pre-calculated to minimize risk. Yet, for humans, it seemed that risk and suffering itself were indispensable parts of training. Farron murmured, almost to himself, "I don't think we could survive even a single day there." Zil nodded, his gaze fixed on the window, as if trying to imagine himself facing the challenges he had witnessed. "Neither do I, Farron. And perhaps that's what sets us apart." During the journey, Major Harlow's words continued to echo in Zil's mind. He recalled how the Major described the cadets' training, always with unwavering conviction. Harlow had no doubts. He had faith in his mission. With his eyes closed, Zil recalled their last moment before departure. He could almost hear Harlow's firm voice again. "You see, Commander, we don't view this pain as something to avoid, but rather as a step towards strength. And what if your cadets don't overcome that pain?" Zil had asked. Harlow had replied with an enigmatic smile, "Then they're not truly soldiers. Those who persevere earn the right to be called so." Zil had never fully understood the logic of that. In the Kresh fleet, every recruit was a valuable piece, trained and selected for specific roles. Losing a soldier was a calculated loss, but a loss nonetheless. However, for humans, the concept of failure seemed to mean something else. It wasn't merely a sign that someone had fallen short, but a form of learning, a continuous test until every physical and mental aspect was forged into resilience. The following day, back aboard the safety of his mothership, Zil was summoned to meet with the Kresh Council. He was tasked with presenting a detailed report on everything he had learned about human methods, but before sharing his observations, he felt the need to organize his own reflections. To do so, he decided to revisit one last recording he had made of the cadets facing one of their most grueling exercises, the live crossfire drill, where young soldiers advanced under controlled explosions and low-power projectiles, simulating a frontline battle. In the video, he could see the face of each cadet contorted with pain and focus. One cadet in particular caught his attention. He seemed on the verge of giving up. His trembling hands gripped his weapon as he struggled for breath, fear filling his eyes. The young soldier was about to collapse, his exhausted body succumbing to weakness. Zil held his breath, watching that critical moment. To his surprise, the cadet suddenly lifted his head as though he had tapped into a deep internal reservoir of strength. Then, with a cry that seemed to come from his very core, he surged forward once more, firing with a precision that defied his physical condition. Zil paused the video, unable to look away. That determination, that drive to overcome his own weakness, was something Zil didn't fully understand but deeply admired. That cadet, he knew, was destined to become a human soldier. A soldier whose strength came not just from skill, but from something much harder to define: willpower. Days later, Zil stood in the center of the Kresh council chamber, facing his people's leaders, ready to present his report. He took a deep breath, his hands firmly clasped in front of him, feeling the weight of their collective gaze. Among them, some appeared skeptical, while others simply waited in silence. "Commanders of the council," he began, projecting his voice firmly, "I return from Earth with a profound and unexpected understanding of human training methods. These methods, I must admit, are entirely different from our own and present aspects that may, to some of us, seem incomprehensible." The council members exchanged glances, their curiosity evident. "Humans," Zil continued, "do not train their soldiers merely to follow orders and execute pre-established tactics. They shape them to endure conditions most of us would consider intolerable, even unnecessary. They face cold, hunger, exhaustion, and above all, fear. Each recruit is pushed to their limits, almost to the point of breaking." A counselor, known for her conservative strategies, interrupted. "Commander, are you suggesting that such methods could be applied among us?" Zil hesitated, aware that the suggestion might shock them. "I am not suggesting we drastically change our ways," he replied cautiously. "But it is impossible to deny that human training produces soldiers who are not only efficient, but also resilient and adaptable." Another counselor with a skeptical expression stood. "And what advantage does that provide?" Zil paused, searching for the right words. "The advantage, counselor, is that when technology fails and order is lost, these soldiers still find a way to fight. They develop a strength that comes from within, and that strength is formidable." After the meeting, Zil withdrew, pondering the weight of what he had just shared. He didn't know if the council would change anything based on his report, but he felt that, in some way, his perspective on humans and warfare had been forever altered. He began writing a field journal, something he rarely did, but he felt the need to record his personal impressions. It wasn't just data or statistics, but thoughts and emotions that couldn't easily be conveyed in a simple report. "Humans," he wrote, "are creatures of a harsh world. They are not content with efficiency. They seek challenges, confront the unknown, and push themselves beyond their own limits. They strive not just for control, but for an understanding of what they can endure. Perhaps this explains why they are feared by so many of us." He continued, each line an attempt to grasp more of the complexity he had witnessed. "And perhaps," he wrote, "we Kresh have something to learn from them." That night, Zil finally rested. But his sleep was brief and disturbed by vivid dreams. Images of human cadets trudging through mud, climbing walls, and facing chaos played repeatedly in his mind, as if his subconscious were trying to decipher the hidden lessons within it all. Upon waking, he realized that something within him had changed. He felt closer to the humans, understanding them in a way he had never thought possible. Even though he wouldn't adopt all their methods, Zil knew that something in his own perspective on training and preparation had shifted. Days later, when he and Farron returned to the Kresh fleet sector, both seemed different. Farron spoke less, his questions more reflective, and Zil himself noticed that his instructions carried a new approach. Instead of avoiding discomfort or failure, he encouraged his soldiers to adapt, to become more self-reliant. Rather than striving for absolute control, Zil began cultivating his soldiers' ability to handle the unexpected. The experience on human soil left a lasting legacy, not only in the words Zil brought to the council, but also in the small changes he began implementing in his unit. Over time, he saw the results. His soldiers became more confident, better prepared to face the unknown. And though he would never openly admit it, Zil knew that part of this strength came from what he had witnessed on Earth, the human spirit of adaptation and resilience, their drive to overcome, and their desire to push beyond the possible. In a final thought as he reviewed his closing notes, he murmured to himself, "Perhaps what makes us stronger is that which we cannot fully understand,